Hello everybody, welcome to Read Baby Read episode 1. I'm with my guest host, Josh.
Hi.
And we'll be doing the first book review of Read Baby Read, and this week we'll be doing Angela Merkel, Freedom. We'll just broadly separate into 3 categories while reviewing this book. Basically her life, Mrs. Angela Merkel's life in GDR, which she spent for 45 years, right?
No, 35.
35 years. And secondly, the second stanza will be the fall of Berlin Wall and before she becomes the first ever female chancellor for Germany. And the third one will be her chancellorship, which she served for
16 years.
For 16 years.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, it will be 2021, which was she.
When she stepped down.
When she stepped down. So 21 minus 16 will be 2005, right?
2005, yes, I remember very clearly. Even the day when she was sworn in as Chancellor for Germany,
So it was basically from 2005 and to 2021. So basically that would be the meat of this podcast and this review of a book. So, but first we just want to talk, we want to generally talk about the book itself before we move into her life, What do you think about the book, Josh? Like after reading it, like
I think what really strikes me most is her frankness, honesty. She wouldn't, be afraid to admit her shortcomings. For example, like in one of the chapters, she talked about, when she first campaigned for the Bundestag, trying to get elected as member of parliament. She
1990.
felt and then she felt that she wasn't confident in public speaking, and then she made some mistakes. She admitted all this while she was writing these memoirs. And the second thing that strikes me most is, although she's not afraid to admit her mistakes, but she also comes across as someone who really stands her ground. For example, like this. We know that her position on Russia and Putin generated a lot of controversy and even backlash from her Western allies. And also her decision to allow up to 1 million refugees, mostly from Syria, to come in, also created unintended political consequences for her. She defended all this in her book, while she was, and then she explained to the reader why she made those decisions, and she let the reader draw their own conclusion. And then she wouldn't be like, unlike Margaret Thatcher, which of course another one of the longest serving world leader in the past, like she already passed on. Yes, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. If you compare Margaret Thatcher's memoirs and Angela Merkel's memoirs, you can clearly see the difference. One of the biggest differences would be like Margaret Thatcher, very assertive, and very she would defend each and every decision that she made in tenure as Prime Minister and as world leader. Whereas Angela Merkel would not be afraid to admit her mistake, but she would also argue why. She would give you the rationale behind those decision-making processes and let the reader draw the conclusion. Margaret Thatcher is different. If you read Margaret Thatcher's memoirs, she basically just presents whatever she thinks is right, and then it's like you either take it or leave it. And that is Margaret Thatcher. So even though they both very prominent world leader, leading 2 very important European countries, but their political approaches and political characters are vastly different.
I think you raised a good point, Josh, because a lot of times when Angela Merkel was first elected, right, the first image or the first person that generally in Europe people get reminded of is Margaret Thatcher. Both are strong women, lady not for turning and all this. But the way that how they wrote about their book, or the way that how they try to defend their political record, is perhaps a bit different. And I generally agree with Josh's points on the book. And it also strikes me it's also a bit, how would I put it? It's a bit revealing to me for an author, for a former head of government to be so forefront about some of the biggest decisions that she made. But I also happen to read some of the reviews from New York Times, from The Guardian. They say that some of the criticism they have for her is that she tried to explain away things nicely, basically. So we obviously we're going to talk about this and we're going to come back to this. But just one small point is that during the Eurozone crisis, she was constantly be criticized by the former finance minister for Greece, Yanis Varoufakis, when Greece was led by the left-wing party Syriza during the Eurozone crisis. At once, she never mentioned him. So that was one thing. And we're going to talk about a lot of things also that shows that aside from her frankness, aside from her people's approach, aside from her being a very sincere politician, she does have this cold-blooded, she does have this political instincts, you know, and she's ambitious, you know. So without further ado, we'll just move on. We'll go to her life in GDR first. So we just want to broadly talk about how basically Angela Kastner at that time before she got married, Angela Kastner and her family fared in GDR. So
good. I mean, for those who probably don't know much about Angela Merkel, her maiden name is Kastner. Her original family name is Angela Merkel. Her current surname Merkel is very interesting. That belongs to her first husband. She divorced the first husband, I think, in the early 1980s or something. And in the book, in the memoirs,
1982.
Yeah, I did it too. Yes, correct. And then she only mentions one line: "I keep his surname." That's it. Yeah. She wouldn't even bother to explain about the divorce and all that. So apparently she probably doesn't want to talk much about divorce or whatever. But
makes you feels like the queen, huh?
Yeah.
The way she explained things is like. I think listener, if you read the book, right, then you probably understand why we put it. You like. A lot of times there's this Chinese word called 点到制止. Basically, she just touches the boy. A lot of times, even the refugee crisis, when she defended, when she came out the famous line, say that we can do it and all this.
Yeah, wir schaffen das.
Wir schaffen das. We can do it. We can.
Exactly,
we can do it. Basically, there's the German translation of saying we can do it. So basically, it's just 点到制止. Basically, just point it to there and just finish the point. She wouldn't go further and elaborate and to make enemies, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Going back to
so it's like it's very interesting that even despite the divorce, she keeps his surname until now. And then I'm not sure about her current husband. What her current husband thinks of that.
And it's interesting also because her first marriage ended in divorce in 1982. So they got on together with his current husband Joachim Sauer. My German, if I couldn't pronounce it. But they only got married quite late,
I think they got married in the 90s. They've been like, what the French would say cohabitation, like living together.
Yes.
Like, living as partners together until like way after the wall came down, the Berlin Wall came down, and then they got married. So during the GDR time, the German Democratic Republic, East Germany times, they actually didn't get married. But they met while they were still in East Germany, when there was still this country called German Democratic Republic. Actually, I personally prefer to call it DDR in German. This Demokratische Deutsche Republik. That is the German version.
Clearly, his German is better than mine.
No, it's because I learned German for 4 years. I just want to prove the point that my German hasn't gone to waste.
That's
right.
great.
Okay, right.
The only German sentence I know is Ich bin ein Mann. I am a.
That's still better than the American president who made a remark at the Berlin Wall. Says JFK. JFK who said Ich bin ein Berliner.
Oh, really?
He made a statement in 1963 when he was visiting West Berlin at the time. And Berliner is actually donut. Right, so it's like German people wouldn't usually, the people who live in Berlin or from Berlin wouldn't usually say that I'm a Berliner, ich bin ein Berliner. They would say like ich bin von Berlin. I'm from Berlin. They wouldn't say Berliner because Berliner is actually the donut. Yeah, right. So there's like there's this joke going around like JFK didn't get a good German coach to teach him how to say it properly.
I see.
But anyway, I think the German people, at least the West German people at the time, took it very nicely. Didn't make an issue out of it. But anyway, there's the side note. Okay, coming back to Angela Merkel, I think I'm very fascinated about her because she's actually an outsider. She's from the East. She became, and then she ended up becoming the Chancellor for the entire United Germany. And for me, I mean, who lived in Germany before and also who sort of like read and understand, read German and understand German history and culture, she never feels that she's fully accepted.
Yeah.
Because, you know, West Germany, let's face it, West Germany took over the entire East Germany, right? So it was a buy-over, right? So the entire East German state that they are was absorbed into the Federal Republic of Germany. So everything changed, including people, I mean technicians, engineers in East Germany losing their jobs because their qualifications were not up to the marks as compared to their Western counterparts and all that. So there was, that explained the massive unemployment and all that. So when she came into politics and then actually her first political party was a Democratic Awakening Party. Also the AP.
Right. It's called the AP.
Yes, but I believe that DAP in Germany at the time probably was a lot more idealistic than the DAP that we have in Malaysia.
The German DAP didn't have a good ending also.
Of course, certainly didn't, because eventually they were, the party was absorbed into
and the founder
CDU.
was caught. He was caught in being the spy for the East Germany.
Yes, that's right.
And that was the first political mentor of Angela Merkel.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, and then after her first venture into politics failed, the party was absorbed into the Christian Democratic Union of West Germany, and then she joined the party and became the minister.
Time, it was a controversy also, because correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, because Christian Democratic Union, which Angela Merkel's party is, which she joined at that time, was perceived to be more
Catholic,
Catholic, but,
male dominant.
Yeah, but she was a
Protestant,
and her father is
a
Protestant pastor.
Yeah, this is also something interesting about her life. Not just she is the first Chancellor of Germany who hailed from the East, but also her father took the other way around, because in the 1950s, when Germany was split into two, the communist camp and then the so-called Western, the democratic or capitalist camp, depending on how you want to define the Federal Republic of Germany at the time, people from the East would flee to the West for better jobs, for better living and all these things. But her father was completely opposite, because her father was from the West, from Hamburg, and then Angela Merkel was actually born in Hamburg, in West Germany, but her father took the entire family to the East. So they go in the opposite direction.
And because of proselytizing purposes.
Yeah, because the millions, I think up to 2 million or something, East Germans actually fled to the West for better living, better jobs, for whatever reasons, or quality of life, or freedom. But the family, Angela Merkel's, the Kastner family, went to the East.
And because
her father was a pastor, her father felt that even like in the communist regime, the Christians there would need a lot of Protestant Christians in East Germany would need a lot of support.
Guidance.
Exactly. So that's why, the family went to the East, and then she ended up growing up in East Germany. I think she was taken to East Germany when she was only a few months old.
Would you mind, would you be, because from that book, from the book, I sort of get a feeling that Merkel, of Mrs. Angela Kastner, never fully agree with that decision, right? She didn't like.
You mean her mother?
Her father taking the decision to move to the East. She was never.
You mean Angela's mother?
No,
or Angela herself?
Angela herself.
But she was too young. She was only a baby. She couldn't make the decision for herself.
She was always wondering why, right? Why her father did that?
Actually, her mother, according to her, I'm sure you have listened to the podcast that she had with Alistair Campbell, the rest is Alistair Campbell and Rolly Stewart. She said that her mother actually had to go with the father because the mother loved the father. So probably, I presume her mother probably didn't agree with the decision, but she went along because she loved her husband. So that's why the entire family went to the East. Whatever it is, I think her life, her experiences in East Germany actually shaped her character, and also in the memoirs, you can clearly see that she didn't agree with a lot of things in the DDR. In the DDR. One thing that was very interesting, very intriguing, I almost laughed when I read that paragraph about that
I'll share you mine.
particular episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Kenneth, I know that you are an avid football fan and a devotee to Liverpool, right? You know about football and all these things, right? Let's have a quick FIFA World Cup quiz. Very quick one. Okay,
you got me there.
I give you 3 questions that are pretty easy. Don't worry. Okay.
Yeah.
The first questions: who was the champions in the last FIFA World Cup 2022? Remember?
2022.
Held in France.
2020. No.
2022, the latest FIFA
was in
World
Qatar,
Cup.
right?
No, the latest was in France. Held in France.
No, it's in Qatar.
Oh no, yeah, sorry. That was Olympics. Yeah, that's in Qatar. Yes, correct. You're correct. Yeah, thanks for correcting me. You see, you are an avid.
No.
Okay, right. You're correct. You're correct.
It's just I disagree
So
with
who was
Qatar being holding the World
So
Cup.
who was the champions? Who was?
France
The
against
finals?
Argentina, right?
Yeah.
The last one was
And then
Argentina, right?
So who won?
Messi won, Argentina.
Oh, correct. Okay, right. The second one's very easy. I'm sure you know it. What was the year when England last won?
1960, Bobby Moore, right?
1960. Are you sure?
1964, 1966,
Okay.
66,
All
right?
Okay. Okay. Make up your mind. Which year was that?
66, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
God.
Okay. I give you a bit of leeway there. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The last question. Who was the champion in 1974?
74.
Have I got you there?
West Germany, is it?
Oh yeah! Brilliant! You see? Wow.
We were talking about Angela Merkel, right?
Okay, yeah, I'll have to give it to you. You are really, expert in football, FIFA World Cup at least.
Yeah.
Yes, in 1974, that was West Germany, or the full name. The full name is full name was Federal Republic of Germany at the time. That won the World Cup. There was actually, I didn't know this until I read her memoirs. There was a match between East and West Germany in round 1.
And who won? West Germany won.
No.
Is
East Germany won against West Germany.
Who she was?
I was surprised. And then she was rooting for West Germany.
Yes.
Because the football match was held in Hamburg, her hometown, where her father came from. So that also shows her fondness of West Germany. She couldn't watch it in public. She writes it very clear in the memoirs. She couldn't watch it in public because it would be very sensitive, right? In East Germany, you wouldn't want to be seen as supporting West Germany. So she left her university dorm or her high school dorm, whatever. She went back home and watched the entire football match at home. She was screaming, she was shouting, she was extremely upset that East Germany won against West Germany. But she was pleasantly surprised and delighted when West Germany went on to win the World Cup for that year.
And throughout her life, sorry, I'll just call it GDR because
Yeah.
I don't know
Okay,
German.
that's fine. Okay,
but throughout her life in GDR, just basically before Germany reunification, she was. At times, she made the point that it's pointless to argue with authorities.
Exactly. Yes.
Keep it inside to you,
Yeah.
or just rant it to your mom. Actually, she never mentioned her father. So I sort of suspect that, in some ways, her father is, if not supportive, is content with the regime at that time. So in some ways, her mother and she was actually not supportive of the country at that time, basically GDR. So basically there was this one particular incident that I remember reading. Is basically she just had a row with the police officer and all this kind of thing. So and she was quite rebellious lah. And she just didn't bother to argue. She accepted all the arguments that have been made by the authorities, by the enforcement officials. But instead, she said that when you are speaking with officers and enforcement officials that are under the communist regime, there's certain way to talk to them. There's certain way to handle them, and that's how she handled Putin.
Exactly.
And the only release that she has is to just go back to her house and just rant it to her mother. So basically that tells you that how much, I think I would use that word, how much she detested the country or the regime that she was living in. But at the same time, And if you read the book, you never seen her anger, she never talk bad about it. Even when she's criticizing GDR, she tried to criticize it very scientifically, in the sense that she's a bit like a Marxist like that, in the sense.
Actually, it's like, I think there's one, I think for a politician, especially someone from East Germany, I think she has a special quality in her character, in the sense that she doesn't, even when she disagrees with you, she would present her disagreements in a very nice way. Okay, for example, like the way she describes Putin is very interesting. Vladimir Putin, Russian president, she would say like basically Putin wants everybody to go along with him. So it's like, and then she disagrees, but she will still go along with him, just to make sure that they didn't create a scene or something. And also the same way she describes President Donald Trump, like I think that sentence is, or that line is also very interesting. She puts it such that I thought I could have a conversation with a normal person. So that is in a very nice way of saying that
she's implying
Trump
is not normal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is we can talk more about that later. But as far as her life in East Germany is concerned, and whether or not her father actually accepted the regime quietly, I'm not so sure, because there is one incident that she also mentions in the book, that her father was actually reported to the state authority because her father was keeping a book of a prominent dissident or something. Her father was a pastor, and then she also said that her mother couldn't teach. Her mother actually studied English.
They were punished.
Her mother was actually an English teacher. Her mother studied English and all that. Her mother wanted to become an English teacher, but that was not possible in East Germany because all the teachers were civil servants, and because of her father's background as a pastor belonging to a Protestant church, and then her mother, it was not possible for her mother to take up a teaching job within the state. And one more incident that she refers to in the book is the experience of her brother, who was actually reported by the school to the education department or something, because the brother made a remark along the lines of something like, the head of state has no sense of humor. The head of state at the time was Walter Ulbricht, before Erich Honecker became the Secretary General of the Sozialistische Einheitspartei, the Social Solidarity Party. Right, so the Communist Party basically. So it's like, I think it shows that I think it runs in the family that they have this sort of like anti-establishment streak that runs in that family. But she tolerated the regime, and then she also found her own,
for 35 years.
Yeah, she found her own way to deal with the kind of suffocating political climate within the GDR. And one clear example was she joined the Deutsche Jugenddeutsche Federation or something.
Basically, it's
Young German Associations.
Communist League for youth.
For youth, exactly. And then the reason why she joined the youth association was that would give her an opportunity to organize cultural events. And then she would also have opportunities to travel out of East Germany. For example, she'd been to Russia. She actually speaks Russian. And then also she was able to visit like Prague and all these like neighboring communist countries, because East Germans at the time were usually not allowed to visit other Western countries except for West Germany. Because it's basically they are the same people. But even visiting West Germany, visiting her grandmother in Hamburg, it only happened once when she was living in East Germany, because it would need approval from different officers and all that. So it wasn't that easy to travel to other countries. But because of her association with this youth league, she was able to travel out of East Germany a few times, and then she even traveled to like Ukraine. She traveled to Georgia. She traveled to Azerbaijan. In those days, all under within the former Soviet.
And it was in one of her travel that she heard about Prague Spring, right?
Yeah, that's right. No, she heard about the Prague Spring when she was in East Germany. But I think Prague Spring had an impact on her, because she was shocked by the crackdown, the brutal crackdown on the peaceful demonstrators. And I think about, I don't know, I can't remember how many people lost their lives. And then she was shocked by the incident. And also another incident, another thing that can prove her sympathies or her, her agreements or her subscriptions to so-called democratic ideology was the fact that she went to Poland, also a communist country at the time, to Gdansk. Gdansk is formerly known as Danzig, part of the Prussian Empire or something, and then but later on it became part of Poland, and they actually Polish people. Actually, Angela Merkel's mother's was of Polish origin, and Gdansk was where Gdansk is where her mother was born. So she went to Gdansk. The reason why she went to Gdansk was she wanted to meet with the youth there, and there were a lot of demonstrations at the time against the Poland communist regime. She was sympathetic, and then she actually visited people from the Solidarity movement. I remember. The Wallace, founded by Lech Walesa and all these so-called democratic leaders. She came back with a postcard of Gdansk and all that. She was stopped by the East German police. They confiscated her postcard. The reason that she actually took the trouble to visit Poland and Gdansk, of all the places, Gdansk, where they had just had a huge demonstrations, where, that was the place that gave birth to the solidarity movement against the Polish communist regime. So that clearly indicates her disagreement with communism in many ways.
And she was devastated when the movement was crushed. Right? That was
indeed.
For context, it was Prague Spring, basically.
The shipyard where this demonstration in Poland, in Gdansk, happened was known as Lenin Shipyard. Lenin, right?
Oh, really?
Yes. That was very ironic. And she was very sympathetic at it. She was already very sympathetic with the solidarity movement.
I just want to mention one more thing before probably we talk about enough about her life in GDR to give viewers or listeners an impression. And one episode that strikes me was that she studied chemistry, right? In quantum chemistry. In the Academy of Science in East Berlin. So basically at that time when she was studying during her teenage years, your courses you need to accompany with all those Marxism and basically
Leninism, Marxism,
political economy.
Exactly.
Basically, it was quite striking to me. Basically, she was criticizing why on earth that there is a mathematical model that was specifically invented just to prove that capitalism will come to an end.
It will collapse.
Right. So basically, at that time, she needs to study that, even though she's taking a science course. So there was this very striking episode, which when I read her book was, she was obviously attending this kind of class. She was bored. She was bored, and so she took out her chemistry and physics homework and to try to complete it in front of a Marxism or Leninism course. The lecturer saw it. The lecturer just publicly humiliated her, basically scolded her and asked her to walk out in front of a lecture hall.
I think she was reported to the authorities.
She was reported.
But she wasn't punished. But I'm sure they kept her record.
They kept her record. But I think what is more revealing is that she felt that she was being humiliated, basically being put on the spot. Basically, in front of a grand lecture town hall, you were being called out, and you were walked out. And the thing is that she didn't think that she did anything wrong, because to her, in her language, right, this Leninism and Marxism is misapplication. It's something that would not work. It's something that could not be applied. In her mind, she is doing something that is much more productive, which is studying her chemistry and studying. So this episode also tells me that, also gives, this was something that I remember most. I remember more things about when she was Chancellor, because some things that her life in GDR was a bit remote to me, including the East Germany.
I think this is really, if you read her memoirs, especially the part on her life growing up in East Germany, you can clearly get a sense that she doesn't agree. She didn't, and she still doesn't agree with
She put it in
communist
the tone.
regime.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then she found a way of dealing with the regime, right? Like I said just now, like how she traveled to other countries just to basically just escape from the suffocating environment, political climate within the country and all that. So that's why that really got me thinking, like, why there are still some people, I'm sorry to say, some of the leftists
Okay. Yeah.
today
You're
around
not
the
saying
world.
sorry to me, which I broadly agree
Okay,
with.
I'm pretty left myself. I consider myself a progressive socialist. Okay, but I just can't understand why some of these leftists, actually many of them, right, in worldwide or in Malaysia, would defend communist regimes.
Yep, exactly.
You know, have they ever not consider the fact that if they happen to live under the kind of regime like Angela Merkel, they would be in trouble. Yeah, they would land themselves in trouble, in big trouble, probably in jail even, right? Because like Angela Merkel, she said like the reason why after she ventured into politics in the reunited Germany, every decision she took, she thought of the consequences first. She wouldn't immediately make
She was a
stand.
careful
Very
politician.
careful.
Yeah.
Like it's like very cautious in her decision making. She wouldn't immediately give you a position on certain issue because she would have to
It's quite
think,
conservative.
the consequences.
Yeah.
That is actually the result of these years of growing up under this oppressive political climate in East Germany, because she constantly refers to this political boundary within DDR or within GDR that you must not step over. Once you step over, your entire life could be ruined just because of this misstep or this overstepping of boundary. So it's like I really cannot understand, like, if the nature of a communist regime is as such, why would so many so-called leftist intellectuals still argue for or defend communism to death today? I really don't understand.
When you talk about this, right, it suddenly, I don't know why it reminds me of someone, the current Secretary of State for United States right now, Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio,
He was someone, he's a Cuban, he's a migrant, came from a socialist, communist state, semi-socialist communist state, and he came out. You can say he is the sort of the more extreme manifestation of what Angela Merkel felt, in the sense that he completely detests socialist policy, restricting freedom and things like that. So basically, and Angela Merkel also she is capable of compromise also. So we talk about she studied the Marxism and Leninism course, right? In the end,
scored B for that. She didn't do too badly.
She didn't
despite her lack of interest in all that, she still scored
I
B
was impressed
for
because
that course.
I came from a background where I did economics and I tried laws for before I did economics. If I came across something that I completely disagree or I completely disinterested, I would just fail on it. I couldn't do it. I have to admire. She basically she was writing the formula to disprove capitalism, but at the same time, she doesn't believe in it.
Exactly. Okay. Maybe one more point before we move on to other other aspects of her memoirs. The reason why she chose natural sciences, it was very national. In her memoirs and also in her podcast with The Rest Is Politics, she said, like, because if you choose natural sciences, 1 + 1 would still 2 + 2 will still equal 4 no matter what happens.
Irrefutable.
Right? So it's the truth cannot be easily bent because natural sciences
it will not bend.
Exactly, it will not bend. However, her interest was in social sciences, but she dare not take it up. Because she knew that the course would land her in trouble.
She dare not.
Because social sciences is about analyzing society and about analyzing human behaviors and all these things. And then you could actually, within a communist regime, you could actually make a lot of missteps based on whatever that you have observed. So that's why she actually shunned social sciences and opted for natural sciences, because that was the safest path for her to take. Things would never go wrong with nature, right? Yeah.
And this is very typical of how within the communist states, right? If you want to rise within the ranks,
Yeah.
right? You normally take engineering courses.
Exactly.
Look at Xi
that's
Jinping.
right. Exactly. I think none of the. I think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think as of now, I have not seen any Chinese leaders coming from
Humanities courses.
human or social science backgrounds and all that.
Okay.
Like in the UK, we know PPE and all that. It's just like
That was the passport to Downing Street.
Politics, philosophy, and economics. You know, so that's the the course that if you aspire to be prime minister, you must at least have done PPE at Oxford.
Keir Starmer would disagree though.
Of course. Until maybe not until, but most of the prime ministers. British prime ministers.
So as Josh has mentioned just now, he spoiled us actually. So Angela Merkel joined DAP, Democratic
Awakening Party.
Democratic
DAP.
Awakening Party.
Though even in German, the acronym would still be DAP. There's Democratic Ausbildungspartei.
And
Demokratische Ausbildungspartei.
I think this is important that we need to announce it also in the podcast is that she was given a choice, but she did not join SPT, which is a Social Democratic Party, which is a bit middle left party.
Yeah. But because she always knew that she belonged to this central right camp.
So she joined the Democratic Awakening. So basically, the Berlin Wall fell, and so there was a reunification.
Exactly.
And her mentor in DAP was was being accused of being a spy for the East
GDR.
For GDR. So the party collapsed, right? Yeah. The party collapsed, and
then there were the party members, but eventually joined the CDU.
It collapsed. But luckily, DAP was in a coalition with CDU. That's why they were able to manage a few seats.
Exactly. Yes.
They able to garner a few seats, and that's where her first big break came, where she was the spokesperson, deputy spokesperson for DAP. For DAP. At that time.
So they are paid. Okay, let's pronounce this in the German way. They are paid. Then people would not think of Democratic Action Party.
So this is clearly only a Malaysia political joke that Malaysian listening.
No, we just like to make fun of political parties in Malaysia in general. We are not specifically targeting DAP. We also make fun of UMNO. We make fun of PAS and all this.
And I could always say
PKR for sure.
And I could always say that the reason I pronounce it as DAP is because I don't know German well. So and so basically we cut short a lot of things. That her second big break was she was first elected as Bundestag in 1990.
Bundestag, in 1990, yes.
And her first, at that time, it was still Helmut Kohl, right? As
Helmut Kohl, yes,
Chancellor.
Okay. I think thanks for bringing him up, because I think throughout German history for the last century and a half, Germany has produced three longest chancellor that served more than 16 years in power. The longest serving chancellor is actually record holder even until today is Otto von Bismarck. Blood and Iron, the chancellor of Blood and Iron, right? Okay, the Prussian, whatever, he was actually Prussian. He served as chancellor for 19 years. The second in the rank is actually Helmut Kohl. 16 years. And then Angela Merkel, also 16 years, but I think short by a few days as compared to Helmut Kohl. So these are the three longest serving chancellors in German history, right?
And I think we can say that Helmut Kohl was quite impressed with Angela Merkel.
In the beginning, yes.
Angela Merkel. And she was promoted to her first ministerial post, which is
Minister for Women and Youth.
Minister for Women and Youth. We just want to touch a short section on this, is that because she dedicated a chapter on it and asking that question, why she was was she a feminist? So there was a rhetorical question. So because I guess in Germany, I look up to it in net and say that because that statement got her into quite a lot of trouble. That's why she felt that she need to come out and talk about it. It's because the word feminist is usually associated with the left.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
progressive.
It was quite unusual
or even to the extreme, like people would take it as women against men, like, you know. Like,
And because this one is very important, is that she was not supportive of abortion. She's not a believer of abortion. So there was
because of her religious belief.
Yeah, basically her religious. So, but throughout that chapter, I was convinced. I really do. I am convinced that I am persuaded by her that she indeed she is a feminist because all her life, as she said, she has dedicated to try to make equal playing field, to carve an equal playing field, basically to give an equal opportunity for both female and male to have a chance to thrive. And that's her. I think that's her definition of being a feminist, which. And the fact that if she's not supportive of abortion, and I could fully agree to that, because very crucially is that she allowed a free vote also. She
on
didn't
abortion.
On abortion. She didn't impose her will as a chancellor or even as a minister of women at that time on her government backbenchers on that. So she allowed a free vote. And I think she's smart enough and she's practical enough to know that she's fighting against the tide, because I guess the German society as a whole is supportive of that.
I think, my first impression of reading that particular chapter on her being appointed as Minister for Women and Youth was that she didn't have an idea about feminism at the time. Don't forget, she actually comes from the East. Under a communist regime, you know, I have to introduce this book, Beyond the Wall, by Katja Hoyer, who is also from East Germany, and she's now teaching in University of Bristol in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. She details her growing up in East Germany as well, and then in this book, she makes it very. She actually gives us. The statistics on how the percentages of women participating in all sectors in East Germany. I think up to 90% of the women the working age women in East Germany was actually in the labor market. So it's like
progressive.
As compared to West Germany at the time probably not even like 50% or definitely less than 60%. So East Germany was doing very well in terms of women participation in the labor market. So for someone like Angela Merkel, who comes from the East, for her to understand the Western concept of feminism, like you must have certain percentage
must
of
be very alien
it's
her.
like, we already achieved that in East Germany, so what are you talking about feminism and all these things? So this is how I understood it. I think she didn't really grasp the understanding. You know, like in China, during Mao Zedong's time, there was this popular phrase, 女人能顶半边天, right? There's women hold up half the sky. Meaning that women actually made up half of the labor force.
Progressive.
Surprisingly progressive. So it's probably similar in all these communist countries in Eastern Europe. And so for her to understand the Western concept of feminism, like you must have certain percentages of women in certain positions and all that, she found this idea very alien, but it took her a while to understand. And then I think eventually at the end of her tenure as Minister for Youth and Minister for Women and Youth, I think she went along with the idea. She agreed that yes, for her probably the situation in a reunited Germany was different. There were indeed a lot of women, working age women who were actually able to participate in the labor market were not given the opportunities, or the state didn't provide sufficiently for them to participate in the labor market. Unlike East Germany, you know, they had the kindergartens, they had the childcare facilities to make sure that women were able to participate in the labor market.
And she relaxed the policy to allow more childcare facilities to be accessed
in the entire
reunited
Germany.
I also wanted, so we probably...
before we go on. Also, it's like before Chancellor Helmut Kohl appointed her as Minister of Women Women and Youth, he actually called her to the office and asked her one question. How do you get on with women?
I remember.
You know, it's like for her, it's like, what kind of question
Helmut
is
Kohl will
that?
probably be cancelled at
Exactly.
this
You
time.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
never forget like the what's that the Christian Democratic Union, the CDU or the CDU.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about now, but in the 80s and 90s was a male and Catholic conservative man-dominated political party. So it's like for her to receive such a question for Helmut Kohl, it's like she was wondering what kind of question is that? It's like, I never got a problem getting. We never talk about getting along with women or men in East Germany.
Yeah.
You know, it's like women and men were equal. I mean, theoretically,
Because we
okay.
have an enemy of the state.
Theoretically, yes, but within the political structure, we know that, like, you know, men still dominated the entire communist structure of East Germany, whatever. But in terms of the labor market, she never thought of this. So it's like this question to her was like, for her, so it was a very funny question. But whatever it was, like, I personally think that she wouldn't have any problem getting along with women, because she did promote throughout her tenure as Chancellor, Minister, and then Chancellor, Federal Minister, and also Federal Chancellor. She did introduce policies that promoted women participation in political sphere, right? And then her assistant for like more than 30 years.
Beate Baumann.
Yeah, Beate Baumann. It's a woman.
Yeah, I got it right.
Yeah, you got it right. She had worked with her for her entire political
And
career.
by the way, it's the co-author also.
Co-author of the
Yeah.
book. And
Yeah.
then she got on very well together.
Yep.
You know, it's like, yeah, so it's like, yeah. But anyway.
That's like her Robin.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like her Robin.
That's right, yeah.
I just jumping ahead, I want to talk about chancellorship of her, but basically her entire life.
Yeah.
Perhaps in her defense, right, where she's less attuned to perhaps women issue is because she was never discriminated in that way. I felt like she was more discriminated because of her nationality, because of where she is
East
from.
Germany,
more
yes,
than
right,
her gender.
Yeah.
So throughout her life, I think Josh will mention this later, or perhaps we can talk about this now, is that throughout her life, right, whether she stand as a CDU leader, whether she was standing as a chancellor, whether she is meeting foreign leaders, every foreign leaders will first ask, including Donald Trump also, which we will talk about, including Donald Trump, will ask about how was it living in the East. So it gives her an impression that her whole life was defined by where she lived, and which we will go back to her life in GDR.
Exactly.
So she was less attuned to women issue in the sense that she was more discriminated upon where she is from, rather where
It is a very good point, because what I'm going to talk about now briefly is people criticize her for being too close to Putin or being too accommodating with Putin. But people, whether in Malaysia or in the West in general, in the world, or the so-called Western camp, what they fail to understand is that Putin and Vladimir Putin and Angela Merkel share one thing in common. They both have the experience of living under a communist regime. They knew how the system worked. They knew how to compromise. They knew how to deal with each other.
But there's a very big difference. One person wanted it to be collapsed. One person wanted it to thrive.
Okay, I'm not sure whether Angela Merkel really wanted East Germany to fail, but I think she disagreed. But she probably only wanted East Germany to open up, you know, rather than collapse, because collapse would...
She doesn't...
because a collapse of a regime would entail a lot of economic and political consequences, like, you know, even waves of refugees and all that could happen, right?
In fact, we're
the collapse
still
of the
living the
system.
consequences now. East Germany is still largely
exactly.
poorer as compared to West.
That's why, like, throughout her book, I didn't guess... She clearly disagreed with East Germany, I mean the regime, but there wasn't a sense of her hoping for the collapse of the regime, right? Although the collapse of the regime, she was happy with the fall of the Berlin Wall so that she could visit her relatives in the West and all that. But whether or not she actually wanted, at the time she had actually hoped for the collapse of the of East Germany, I'm not sure. But whatever it is, precisely because of this shared experience of living under a communist regime, she knew she had a way of dealing with Vladimir Putin, basically accommodating, compromising, and all these things without actually subscribing to whatever President Putin was believing in. So I think that aspect has to be given more weight in our analysis of Russo-German diplomatic relations.
When Angela Merkel talked about she having a special way or a special method or special technique to deal with the Russian leaders or people from the East, right? The West will obviously wield it very skeptically.
Yeah, of course.
Which is, to be fair, very unfair to Angela Merkel.
Yes,
yeah,
precisely. Because, she was from a small, not so small, but, a relatively small country from Eastern Europe called Demokratische Deutsche Republik. They are.
Yeah.
And then they constantly living in the shadow of a big empire called the Soviet Union, right? So, for people from these Eastern Bloc countries in those days, they always had to watch over their shoulder. So, their leaders at least, they had to make sure that they didn't make any statement that would displease Moscow, right? So, for Merkel, she had to, internally within the country, she had to make sure that she wouldn't overstep the boundary set by the Sozialistische Einheitspartei, SED, the Communist Party of East Germany. But she also had to make sure that the entire country wouldn't do anything to the displeasure of the Soviet Union. So that's, I think, to a large extent, that explains the ways, the kind of accommodating posture that she would adopt in dealing with Vladimir Putin. Yeah, but whatever it was, I think for her biggest achievements was that she survived the regimes, and then she fought for the best interests of the entire Germany as Chancellor or the Federal Chancellor of the country. So it's like, I think it wasn't an easy job, but I think she had a way of dealing with them, and also eventually she still didn't feel fully accepted by West German leaders. Okay, so-called former.
This was throughout her book.
Throughout, because whatever decision, whenever she had a debate with all these CDU leaders,
or CSU,
or CSU leaders, she would constantly doubt, like they rejected my proposal or my position. Was it because I'm from the East? Was it because I'm a woman, or was it because I'm a former East German, right? Yeah. So that's why, like, I think there was one of the speeches towards the end of her chancellorship. She said, like, if I think the entire Germany has to learn how to accept the fact that East Germany did exist and was a vibrant, and also a very politically active country. I think for many West Germans, for them, they just took over the entire East Germany. The GDR never happened. The GDR was a failure. GDR was a disaster. Exactly. And then we came and took over the entire country on their behalf. But for Angela Merkel, it's different. My former country, GDR, did survive, and we didn't do too badly, actually. In terms of economic development, it was second to the Soviet Union in the Eastern Bloc. They had decent living.
And it's freer as compared to more
they had a lot of
states,
facilities, state welfare and all that, and then she grew up as a healthy person, right? And then it's like, so it wasn't really an entire failure. But from the perspective of West German leaders, there they are, basically was a failure. That's why we had to come in and take over the entire country. And for her, like, the entire German nation is still learning to accept the fact that GDR did exist and did survive and did thrive at some point. And very interestingly, the German military actually hosted a ceremony before she stepped down as chancellor, right? She requested a song to be played. The song is called "Du hast den Farben vergessen." You have forgotten the color film.
And it's an East German folk song.
It's an East German popular song. It was an East German popular pop song, and then Angela Merkel liked it when she was young. I think that song came out in 1974, and then she was like 20 years old at the time. So she really loved the song. That's why she requested, during the seminary before she stepped down, she retired as chancellor, she actually requested the song to be played, and then they played the song for her, the music for her. She had tears in her eyes. So I think that shows her emotions of belonging to a country. She probably was hoping that this country would do better, would be freer, so that they wouldn't have to run to the West for reunification or for salvation or whatever. I think there was a lot of emotion going into that moment. The reason why she's
still haunted by the past in some ways.
Yeah, she's haunted by the past. She also felt that she was not fully accepted by at least the CDU leadership. That was largely made out of West Germans, male leaders rather than female leader.
And she struggled in the sense that, I remember, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, she was not able to stand as leader for the first general election after Hamilcourt, right? Because
that was 2002.
Hang
on, 2005,
2002,
1997, 1998,
CDU lost.
2002. Yes, 2002.
And
yes,
she gave way. She was the party leader.
The leader of Christian Socialist Union.
Social Union. So,
CSU is a party only confined to Bayern or Bavaria.
Bavaria.
Okay, Bayern,
so
Bayern,
CDU is they are part.
Exactly.
Is the CSU sisters party lah. So basically,
Edmund Stoiber. Yes. Edmund Stoiber.
Yeah,
Edmund Stoiber.
So basically,
yes.
She didn't. She was okay. We need to talk about. So 1998, CDU lost.
Election to the SPD.
So it's Angela Merkel. So Angela Merkel, before the loss, she was Minister of Youth, then become a Minister of Energy.
Indeed,
And
precisely.
she lost. And we need to talk about this. Apparently, when there was a movement to oust Hamilcourt and Wolfgang Schäuble because of the scandal,
the donation scandal,
the donation scandal, right? People accuse Angela Merkel. This was I read from the book reviews, right? The German press was ruthless. Was very harsh on her. They accused her of being very ruthless because Angela Merkel wrote an open letter, put it on the press, and asking.
She was seen as a betrayer.
Asking Hamilcourt to resign. So strangely familiar to some of the operations Mahathir did.
Okay. Just give our listeners a bit of a context. In Germany, traditionally, CDU and CSU, they form an alliance. CDU is Christian Democratic Union that is present in the entire Germany except for one state called Bavaria, or in German called Bayern, right? Bayern Munich, like
mainly
the
to
football.
The south, right?
Yes, to the south, bordering Austria and Czechoslovakia, I think. As well, Czech Republic, sorry. No. I'm still trapped. I'm still trapped in the Soviet Union time, right? Okay. And then, so traditionally, when there's a general election, usually it is the leader of CDU because it's a bigger party. It has presence in all the federal states except for Bavaria, right? That contest for the chancellorship in elections. But in that particular year, 2002, because Angela Merkel was a fresh CDU leader, she had just been elected as leader in that year, I think, in the same year, and also most probably because she's a woman and then she's from the east, so she was actually overlooked, and then this Edmund Stoiber, the leader of CSU of Bavaria, actually insisted that he wanted to be the candidate for the chancellorship. So she gave way. So she didn't present herself as chancellor candidate for that year.
But CDU still lost.
Yeah, they still lost to SPD. They lost to
Schroeder.
Schroeder. Yes.
Schroeder.
Schroeder. Yes, they lost to Schroeder of SPD. But she managed to win in 2005 in coalition with SPD. And that's how she became the first woman chancellor of Federal Republic of Germany.
Merkel, in 2002, if Merkel was a lady, was a man, and she was not from the east, she would have.
She probably would have. She most probably would have because CSU is a junior partner in this coalition. They just want to make sure that they continue to rule Bavaria. They actually never really had like federal aspirations or ambitions. But I think for that year, Edmund Stoiber saw because even I think I'm not quite sure, but I think Angela Merkel actually won the leadership of CDU by a very slim margin.
Yep, very
So
slim
she
margin.
was actually quite weak. Her leadership was
She
actually
was a
quite
bit
weak
like John
within the
Major.
CS.
She was
exactly
until last minute
That's
only
right.
she decided to throw her head into the ring.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
And a lot of people,
Edmund Stoiber saw the opportunity.
and a lot of people was still quite pissed about how she pushed out Helmut Kohl through an open letter, which is a bit. Apparently, according to my research, right, it was a bit un-German.
I think she was very blunt.
Yeah, she was
She wrote an article to the Frankfurter Allgemeine, which is a conservative
newspaper
broadsheet in Germany, widely read by people in the finance sector and all the the conservative segments of basically the newspaper appeals to the conservative segment of German society. So in that article, she argues that it is time to get rid of the war horse. I think, basically she meant Helmut Kohl, and have a fresh start for the party. And it is time to pass the baton to the next generation. And you have to understand by 2000, I think the scandal came out in 2001.
Yeah.
And then Helmut Kohl had been the party leader for more than like 16 years or something. So it was like quite long, even by German standard.
It's like Mahathir putting the knife on Tunku Abdul Rahman in some ways.
That's right. But Mahathir himself also ended up as like prime minister for 22 years.
When I read Angela Merkel's biography, right, she mentioned it in a very nonchalant manner. It's only I read the book reviews, right? They will only say it was quite a big scandal actually at that time. She was very un-German in that sense.
That was also because in her memoirs, I can clearly see the influence of her upbringing in the East German state, discipline, and pragmatism, discipline, and also her family upbringing. Her father was a pastor. You have to be truthful to yourself and truthful to to society and all that.
Very Margaret Thatcher.
Exactly the same thing. Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel also share one thing in common. Both their fathers were active in the church. Margaret Thatcher's father was adamant.
Aside from being a shopkeeper,
I think a Methodist adamant. In Lincolnshire, and
Theresa May also.
Theresa also, exactly. You see all these three women very much influenced by their Christian father. It's like that. I think the fact that their Christian fathers were active in the church had huge impact on their political thinking and outlooks. So it's the same with Angela Merkel. She couldn't accept the fact that being one of the most successful parties in Germany, CDU was involved in donation scandal. The donation scandal was that Helmut Kohl, as party chairman, the party leader, set up a separate account to receive money from different parties without the party leadership knowing it. So that was actually against, like when we look at Germany, Germany, German people, they are honest, they are methodical, they are very good at sciences, they are very disciplined and all that, right? They're very honest. But what Helmut Kohl did at the time with a private account,
unacceptable,
completely opposite of what we call the German discipline. So I think she couldn't take it.
And it also destroyed the political career of Wolfgang Schäuble, which is seen as the natural successor to Helmut Kohl.
But that was also because of that incident that I think Helmut Kohl changed his opinion of Angela Merkel completely. In a few interviews that Helmut Kohl had,
was critical against her.
Yes, he was very critical of her. He would say that she actually wasn't very hardworking, she wasn't paying attention to detail and all these things. I don't know how
then
true
why
it
do you
was.
appoint her as minister then?
I think it's it's just like Mahathir, it's like, I have the habit of being taking advantage of. I have the people, I have the habit of choosing a wrong successor. I have a habit of being taken care of, being taken advantage of, and also it's like Mahathir likes to say, like, I always get cheated by people that I trust and all these things. But they never mention about the moments when they betray the trust of others, right? it's the same thing. I mean, many politicians have that tendency
Yeah.
of blaming others
Yeah.
for their own failure.
So during her first chancellorship, it was not easy. So
Of course not. It's
Yeah,
like,
she was
it
struck
was a
by
grand
the-
coalition. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a grand coalition, and most importantly, she was
Yeah.
struck by the Eurozone
Yeah,
crisis,
exactly.
the economic crisis, which, to be fair, if you say it may be true that you call Angela Merkel as a conservative, where people has that impression that she's the Swabian housewife, spend within your
Yeah,
means,
yeah,
right?
yeah, right,
But
yeah.
but during her first coalition years, she raised taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why she's pragmatic in that sense also. And I have to be honest, at that time when I was reading about Eurozone crisis, I thought she did the wrong move. I thought she should have spent more money and bail out the pigs. Portugal,
Ireland,
Greece,
Italy, and Spain.
Spain.
Not Italy, sorry, Spain.
Spain.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
but she gave out her case, and she felt that, and she always maintained that the Federal Bank of the Eurozone Bank of Germany, Bundesbank is always separated.
And the European Central Bank.
European Central Bank in Frankfurt, right? If I'm not mistaken.
European Central Bank is both Bundesbank and European Central Bank are both
so basically,
based in at Frankfurt.
Yeah, in Germany, because they
Frankfurt
have that hyperinflation history, that sorry episode of that history. They always make it to a point that politics and the monetary policy is completely separated.
Yeah.
So, but outsiders and foreigners always believe that Angela Merkel could have played a role to basically lower the interest rate, probably to help out Greece.
Yeah.
But she refuses to budge.
Yeah.
And she gave out her case. And I have to respect that in the sense that she did argue her case well. But it's just that a lot of times, again, she mentioned it in a very nonchalant way, and she handled it nicely.
Yeah.
I would say, do you have anything to add on that? So, but that's not much, because I'm afraid that our viewers will have little interest on on what happened. But basically, she handled it well, and people perceive she came out stronger.
Yeah.
I would say she came out stronger.
I think the German people started to have more respect for her.
Yeah.
She defends her position in the book, in her memoirs as well, because she says, like, if you want to join you are in the European Union, you want us to contribute to your economies and all that, and then you have to play by the rule, right? So you have to, there are rules to follow, so you have to follow the rules.
And strangely enough, when she gains goodwill within her country, but as the whole of Europe, people start to dislike her.
Yeah.
Because basically given her the nickname of Swabian housewife,
yes,
you need to spend within your means. Basically, you need to have trade surpluses.
Yeah.
If you want a strong country in terms of economy, you need to build up your exports, just like Germany did. But my argument is that not every European country is Germany. So, but that's a different point. So today we are talking about Angela Merkel. So, does she strike you as someone that is more of someone that is not refusing to budge, or basically she felt that is the best way to save Europe at that time? Yeah.
I think that with the benefits of hindsight, I think that was the best opportunity, because during that crisis, the Eurozone crisis, one of the most shocking things that I can remember was the fact that Portugal, in order to join the Eurozone, actually doctor, their expenditure and all that. They said that they had no deficits and all that in their budget, so they were qualified to be part of a Eurozone, and it turned out not to be true. It turned out that the Portugal actually was running huge deficits when they were applying to join the European Union. So of course it was also the failure of the European Union in actually monitoring the financial health of these potential member countries
and
properly.
They are not in financially good health.
Exactly. Yes, it's like if I were Angela Merkel, I probably would have done the same, because as you said, like, if you are in this union, we are in this union together, and then we, Germany, being one of the biggest contributors to the European Union, of course we need to have a say in how your economy is run. It is not that we are completely divorced from your economic planning and
she did
development.
bail
and all
out.
that. Yeah,
She
she
did
did.
bail- yeah.
She did bail out. It's just that we had to impose certain conditions that you had to make. You really have to, you make sure that you'll be able to restore the financial health of your country, otherwise, or economic health of the country. Otherwise, like that would have serious implications for the entire European Union. She wasn't just a Chancellor of Germany. She was also looked up to as the leader of the European Union, right? Yeah. So it's like she and French. I mean, the president at the time, I can't remember who it was. Probably Hollande. No, that was before Hollande. That was Sarkozy. Yeah, but Sarkozy was an ineffectual leader at the time. So basically, the entire European Union was looking to her for leadership. Yeah, and then she rose to the occasion. She
Yeah.
rose, she
Along
actually
with Obama at the time
Along with
lah.
Obama at the
Yeah.
time, and the UK constantly bickering about whether to remain or to leave. Eventually, they left. But the UK at the time wasn't a reliable leader to count on. And that left her as the only viable leader of the European Union.
Speaking of UK,
Did they have any other choice?
yeah. Speaking of UK, that was also one of the time that she admitted her mistake also lah. So just to put into context that shortly before the referendum on Brexit, David Cameron went to the European Council and argued for a better deal lah.
Yeah.
So before bringing it back to the UK people for a referendum. So Angela Merkel was distraught at that time after the Brexit vote, basically whether European Council as a whole and maybe under her leadership she would have done more, basically to give perhaps freedom of, but how can you compromise on freedom of movement on this, which is a core Brexit issue? Because to me, the European Union has been extremely kind to the UK already. They never force you to adopt Euro. The only sticking point is freedom of movement. So this was where Angela Merkel was surprisingly candor and forefront also. When she talked about it. So she basically says that whether during her chancellorship at the time when Brexit referendum happened in 2016, that whether she should have been given to more of the David Cameron demands.
Right.
But before that, I think we're going to talk about the refugee crisis. The refugee crisis happened in Euro.
In summer 2015,
Summer 15, which in some ways defines the entire political leadership of Angela Merkel. So what do you think about that?
Okay. Of course, like these days, many people criticize her for making the wrong move. Germany shouldn't have allowed all this 1 million of refugees to come into Germany. But I think, the way she defends her decision in the book is that, we have a moral obligation. I think that is fully understandable because she doesn't mention it in the book, but I can understand that, Germany in history committed serious, crimes against humanity, Nazi Germany and all that. And then Germany was actually a perpetrator during Second World War, First and Second World War actually. So she has this history in mind, and this is the moment for her that so-called refugee crisis in 2015 was the moment for her to prove that the Germany under my leadership today was different from whatever the other European countries had thought of. This was the moment that we had to actually assume the leadership when there wasn't any, when moral leadership was in short supply at the time, because at the time people in the UK, they were arguing about whether or not to impose immigration rules to stop people from coming in, reducing refugee quotas. It was the same in the US. Donald Trump was running for president first time, and then he was constantly playing up the
anti-migrant fears,
anti-migrant sentiments, all these things. So, and then France was also, was also being beset with this, immigrants issues and all these things. So that left Germany to actually demonstrate the leadership, and then they took it. When she actually took up the leadership, and then she decided, wir schaffen das. we
can do it.
We can do it. Actually, I prefer another English translation, which is we can manage.
We can
We
manage.
can manage. Yeah. So because like we often say, can you manage? Can't do sharpen. Can you manage? It's like, yeah, we are sharpen does. So we can manage. We can manage it. So yeah. And then of course, like with the benefits of hindsight, I agree that she probably made the decision too quick. She didn't think of logistical support. Like for example, like there was not insufficient number of Arabic speakers, and also there wasn't enough hospital beds.
Jams up the asylum seeking.
And also,
just for
the lack of Arabic interpreters also created communications barrier. Also created a lot of miscommunications and all these things. Yes, I agree. And as for the so-called terrorist incidents, I have a different view, because don't forget at the time there was a European Union, the Western countries led by the US were actually fighting against ISIS. So there were people from within ISIS,
which has already hardened.
Exactly, they were using the opportunity to infiltrate into European countries, looking for opportunity to actually wreak havoc. So unfortunately, Germany fell victim to that. But I wouldn't blame Angela Merkel for that. I think for her, I think she probably made a decision without actually thinking of the logistical support on the ground that was needed at the time. Make sure that you have sufficient numbers of doctors, nurses, hospital beds, interpreters, and all that. And a lot of social workers were actually eager to help the refugees, but they had no one to interpret for them. So that also created a lot of problems. A lot of people were not given timely assistance or attention because of all these logistical challenges, and also misunderstanding, miscommunications, I agree that that's like but overall, I think she made the right decision. She actually in the podcast with racist politics, she said we Europeans, we talk about human rights, we talk about humanity. This is a time that we demonstrate to the world that we stand for our principles. For that, I salute her for her courage. It wasn't easy for her because she was actually attacked right, left, center, all corners.
Within the government.
And also wider society.
A state minister openly opposed her, right?
Yeah, exactly. The home minister.
The home minister openly opposed her. And I think we need to make the case also is that it is economically practical to actually accept it, because we are talking about declining population in Germany, and in order to keep Germany factories in working, the productivity, the production of cars, automobiles, which has defined German's economy, you needed new labor.
Exactly.
You needed new labor.
Okay. Let's be very frank. When she made the decision of allowing up to 1 million refugees from Syria, including Palestinians living in Syria, to come into Germany, okay, she wasn't doing it purely for altruism.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
She also had the objective of reviving rural economy in Germany in mind, because she knew that a lot of small towns and villages were losing people,
and mostly are cheap labor.
Exactly.
They need cheap labor.
So she knew that when these young people came in, they could fill up the jobs in the rural areas. They could potentially
and hopefully
revive
one day become
rural
German,
economies,
full German citizen.
which is quite true. It's like a couple of years ago, even the Spiegel magazine in Germany did a survey. Like many of the rural small towns, they say a lot of I back in the 2060s, 70s, I had no workers, but these Syrian refugees came in and I just gave him the job, and now he's the supervisor and this and that, like things as such. So they actually filled up. Many of these refugees actually fill up the jobs in the rural areas. They would go to places where German people, young people do not want to go, or they take up jobs that young German people do not want.
So I applaud her also.
I think
so.
Of course,
I felt
I think
and it reminds you, I think, from what we are right now, it seems like it's the good old days, and finally there was some leader who could do the right thing. But we have to admit also that hurt her politically. She did that I think after the third election, right? After the third election around 20, and
The election was 2017. Yeah, no, hang on.
2015.
The first was 2005, 2009, 2013.
Yeah,
and then 2017 was her last election.
And that hurt her because AFD immediately showed up in the polls.
Alternative for Deutschland.
Which is we can call it a far right party
yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
Yeah, it is not just it is
before that they were still not calling themselves far right, but now they have fully embraced it already. So and that hurt her. And I just want to mention, so we want to talk about a little bit about Merkel's legacy, and then we add in Putin and Trump before we end this. I find it very striking also that the whole AFD, Alternative for Deutschland, is actually a rebuttal of Merkel's policy, because Merkel's during Eurozone crisis said that there is no alternative in bailing out the PIGS countries, basically the countries stricken by the Eurozone, the European countries stricken by Eurozone crisis. And there is a movement that came out against it. Basically, it's anti-European, anti-EU, that came out that said that there is an alternative called Alternative for Deutschland. Do you know this before that?
No, I didn't.
I didn't.
No, I didn't know about this.
Basically, the Alternative for Deutschland is basically a whole rebuke of Angela Merkel's legacy. So and the fact that they are rising right now tells you that Angela Merkel's idealized Germany is probably... Let's talk about Angela Merkel idealized Germany, which is stronger European Union. Perhaps there is more pragmatic in managing economies and also be more kind to foreigners, refugees, and less about German identity and all this kind of thing. But AFD is the complete opposite of that. And
I think even now, because of this, the rise of AFD, you can see the CDU is shifting further to the right. The potential next chancellor, what's his name? Friedrich Merz.
Merz.
Yes, he already made it very clear. It is time that
He was briefly mentioned in the book as a state minister.
Actually, he was contesting for the leadership, CDU leadership. Against her, but he lost.
Yeah, he lost.
Yeah, and then he went back to business and made big money. Then he came back as a rising politician, and now he's set to become the next chancellor of Federal Chancellor of Germany.
Still negotiating, right?
Yeah, still negotiating. It's just a matter of time. They hope to make it before Easter, so that will leave them with about 2 weeks' time to negotiate. And whatever it is, I think Merz has already made it very clear. It is time that Germany should put our national interests, at the top of the agenda. And also, he's not ruling out of actually spending his government spending more money on strengthening German military.
Yes.
This is because of Trump and because
Ukraine.
of the withdrawal of United States from involvement in Europe, also in the world. I think this is very ironic because post-war Germany has been working very
pro-America.
Exactly, working very hard to ensure that the country would remain pacifist, and also the country would follow the leadership of the United States and other and also to lead Europe in consultation with other European countries, not just by its own decisions and all that. And also, for the longest time, Germany refused to send their troops overseas right until 1999 during the Kosovo. Before that, they refused to send their troops overseas because they're still haunted by this First and Second World War, especially the Second World War, the Third Reich and all that. So it's now you can see the shifts is happening. Germany is forced to shift her position on many issues, including her looking up to the US for leadership, her equal partnership with European countries, and even her pacifism. All these positions are being severely tested
and challenged.
With the rise, because of the rise of AFD, and also because of the second presidency of Donald Trump.
And this brings us nicely to the relationship between Merkel, Putin, and to the Ukraine war that we're going to talk about, and perhaps Trump. So some people rightly or wrongly, criticized Merkel for the state of Europe right now, in the sense that we could not Europe as a whole could not sufficiently hold Putin to account.
Yeah.
And that, but again, I thought it was a bit unfair because a lot of times Putin was encouraged by what happened in United States. But what do you think about that? And some of the book reviews and I personally also thought that the way that she defended Putin, or not Russia, on supplying the gas, in terms of the economic relationship that they share, was some of the people say was a bit tepid and was a bit weak lah. Yeah. I find that also because I find that a bit also because basically she was saying that we need to phase out the Nord Stream. Yeah. But at the same time, basically she said that we need to stop talking to Putin. It was even before Crimea that she knows that Putin has will invade and he's not being a good negotiator. But at that time they are still making this oil deals and gas deals with Russia. You know, this was where you can't square that round hole.
Like I say, she put German's national interests. She had German national interests uppermost in her mind. So for Germany at the time, Germany has been the most important, biggest economy in Europe since Second World War. Okay, and also technologically the most advanced. And so that's why Germany relied a lot on affordable oil and gas. And then where could they source this natural resources from? It was Russia that offered them. So for her, it's like I would just snap the opportunity as long as German national interests were safeguarded, protected. The same way that she dealt with China, even like during like Hu Jintao's time, right until like after Xi Jinping came in, she rarely raised the issues of human rights in China, because for her to protect German businesses operating in China was the most critical important thing, right? So okay, I agree. Like if we look at like if let's say European Union or Angela Merkel provoked Russia, okay, she disregarded all the German interests, and then when the head had provoked Vladimir Putin, what will happen? We probably have like 15 years of war. Right? We never know. Like, so I think she was caught in a very difficult position. I think she had this delay tactic, basically, for her buying time. As long as we agree, we go along with his demands, and also to keep him at bay, to keep him in check. Then at least we could buy ourselves another 10 years of peace or something, right? I don't know, but but for her, I think that was. She writes in her books, like she basically leads out her arguments why she made the kind of decision. I'm not arguing for her, but she already argues for herself in the book, but she is not forcing us to accept her explanation. She basically let the reader to draw their own conclusion on this. Like,
I forgot I have to admit, I forgot the final details already. There was one chapter that she dedicated to why she rejected the membership of NATO for Ukraine at 2004, is it?
2004,
not 2004.
No, 2008 or something. Like NATO, actually, I think for her, it was she had a reason for it, because you remember the agreement between Mikhail Gorbachev way back in 1989, 1990 with the
when Ukraine was forced to give up all the nuclear weapons.
With the European community, European Union wasn't formed yet. The European community hadn't evolved into European Union at the time. It was European community, and the US at the time was that there would not be NATO expansion, and that was with that understanding. Mikhail Gorbachev allowed all this Eastern Bloc to become democratic or whatever, to open up their doors to the West and all these things.
Yeah.
Then later on, what happened? We saw what happened. Like, NATO expanded to Poland, expanded to Czech Republic.
The last round was 2004.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that for Merkel's, like, she didn't write it in the book, but she probably thought that the West also didn't honor their portion of the deal as well. And
I forgot the details really, but she made that argument, and I was sort of convinced by it. So if listeners are interested, you may read about it. It was fascinating, and I guess we can conclude it instead that I suddenly remember that there was one motto which is similar to the late Queen Elizabeth, which defines her entire political career, is that she always do things that never explain, never complain.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why a lot of times when we are talking about her book, you will see that a lot of times is that what we thought about her, because she didn't make it very clear that what kind of decisions that she made. Of course, she made some decision, but the rationale behind it was often blurred in a very delicate manner. She on purpose redacted some of the most important exchanges. That's my view. She's always like this, and I admire her for that, because in some ways you need to be as a head of a government, you need to have some mystique about you, like the British monarch in that sense.
No, I think for me, she's not really that mythical in a sense, and I think she's quite frank in whatever that she explains, like her positions when she was in government and all these things. I'm not saying that she has done everything right, but what I admire her is the fact that she puts everything out for you to judge her. Like these were the considerations when I was making the decision. Up to you whether or not you like to accept it or not. Entirely up to you. And also, she is not. You can see, like, in her writing and all that. Even if you try to read between the lines, she is never scathing of anyone. She's never dismissive of anyone. She would just including Putin and
Greek
Trump.
Prime Minister.
Trump
exactly. It is. Trump.
There's like, she would just like, I thought I could have a conversation with a normal person, but no, that turned out not to be the case. But she didn't say anything really nasty about other leaders. Unlike Margaret Thatcher, like, you could clearly see that in her memoirs, she's very dismissive. She actually looks down on her colleagues, cabinet colleagues,
And she's not afraid to say that in Downing Street, I lashed out at someone, and most probably it's Jeffrey Howe.
So it's like, and you don't see that in her memoir. So they are both, like I say, they are both very important, prominent female leaders in the West. But their political characters are vastly different. Their political approaches are also very different.
I disagree with you on Trump though, when she talked, because she sincerely hoped that Kamala Harris would win the presidential election.
I think for her it's like, okay, she basically, I think that probably because of, I think she, yes, thanks for reminding me. I think one occasion when she is clearly annoyed, you can see that she's clearly annoyed in the memoirs, is the fact that Trump actually completely disregarded her. She offered her hand, and then Trump would just like walk,
and
just
that was
walk
on
past
purpose,
her,
according to her,
without shaking her hand.
Yep.
So she felt disrespected. So I think she has a reason
but
to.
I kept thinking about that. Just give the context. So basically, there was first time Angela Merkel meeting
in the White House,
meeting Donald Trump in the White House. So upon arrival, when Angela Merkel get out from the car, so there was a photograph session. So you will see, like, if Benjamin Netanyahu came. Donald Trump would be more than happy to shake his hands. But for Angela Merkel at that time, he didn't. He didn't. He deliberately ignored that request, even when Angela Merkel was getting near her and speaking to him. Right. So.
But then again, we don't know why Donald Trump shut her off. Was it because she's a woman, or was it because
I think it's a superiority complex. They basically want to show. He basically want to show who is the boss.
But I mean, Trump doesn't do.
Hands,
Trump doesn't do that to everybody.
Yeah.
But he did that to her very clearly.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know whether that has something to do with the fact that she's a woman, or is it because she's from East Germany or something? I don't know.
And
But,
she find it very...
But she's very annoyed by
Yeah.
that. She's still, I think she's still upset about the incident. Otherwise, she wouldn't have, made it clear that I sincerely hope that Kamala Harris would win the presidential
and
election.
it's only towards...
Of course, that was not to be.
and it's only towards Trump that she showed that emotional
Yeah,
side
yeah,
of him.
exactly,
Even to be
yes.
fair to Putin...
With Putin, no, you don't see her emotions. Yeah.
This is where some people would believe that perhaps you would have redirect your anger towards him in order to make a case, But again, throughout her career, she never made that kind of... she's never that kind of person that is led by emotion, Again...
Yeah, she's very calm.
Yeah.
Rational.
It was only Trump.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
only
yeah,
like
yeah.
everything. Like it was only Trump.
Yeah.
So I guess it was about time to conclude, and that's a good way to end it.
Yeah.
I believe so.
So anyway, by all means, if you're interested in German history, politics, this is one of the books that I must recommend. We must recommend to you. Yeah. We are not saying that you have to take whatever that she writes in the book and in entirety. You draw your own conclusions about one of the longest serving leaders in the West.
Yeah, and this Baby Read series will continue going on.
Yeah.
We'll try to have it monthly. And the next book we'll be doing is Tash-All, the South.
Tash-All, the South. Yes, right.
So,
there's a bit controversy that goes with it, but we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about the book
episode.
and also the author himself. To introduce to Malaysians and around the world how brilliant this Malaysian author is. So don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.